Well, hello everybody, nice to see everybody again. I just want to say that it's great to be here, a really friendly crowd. I spent most of last week with a bunch of Yorkshire farmers and working for the Drainage Board. So you can imagine what that was like, one or two of you in this room. So it's nice to be here, very nice to be here. So yesterday I gave a presentation on a project in California, quite a long way from home obviously. Complete transformation now to another well not overseas country, but another foreign country, almost as inhospitable as California. You know, this place called Scotland, where my business partner lives. But this was a really interesting project, I think, that I had a bit of involvement in Aberdeen, just outside Aberdeen. So let's jump into this. So here's Aberdeen, as you can see, and the site, East Tullos Burn, is just to the southeast of Aberdeen. In terms of what the site looked like before the project went in, fairly typical urban type of stream system, been straightened for agriculture, homogeneous ecology, heavily degraded. It flows into the sea, into the North Sea south of the River Dee, and it was channelized or canalized pre-1850s. Just said that for agriculture, and now the catchment is highly industrialized, as you'll see from some of the photos, and a lot of urban development, and the anthropogenic impacts and the other constraints that have been applied to the system is a very low energy system, pretty low velocities, fairly flat slopes, gradients, and then some problem social issues locally. This as you'll see from the next slide, I think this river was really, almost to a certain extent, has historically been used as almost an open sewer. All sorts of rubbish is thrown into here, and some of the industry upstream has significant water quality impacts. And water quality was a main driver for Aberdeen City Council on this project. This is a classic example. Actually, this was during construction, but or just after construction, I think, Hamish, right? And you can see here, some sort of diesel or oil hydrocarbon type of emission. This was to the water quality basin at the upper extents. So in terms of the layout here, you see some flats, and then you can see the very straight alignment of East Tullos Burn, where it flows out into the North Sea through culverts, comes out through a culvert under the railway embankment. You see the water treatment works, and I'll show some other constraints here in the next slide. But the objectives, or the criteria, if you like, for the project were a much less engineered channel, more naturalised channel, encouragement of natural processes, free up the natural processes and the ecological response will come. I've mentioned the improvements of water quality and hence ecology. And also, really important to the project, to create an aesthetic feature, a feature of this part of Aberdeen where the locals would actually take ownership and realise that throwing shopping carts and old tyres into what was in recent times almost an open sewer, was not acceptable, and that by recreation of this or rehabilitation of this site, they may take more pride and ownership of it, and I think that's certainly happened to a certain extent. Not always, but to a much greater extent. So here you can see one of the crossings. What we should also mention is there was an existing footpath trail that in high flow times would flood, and the locals couldn't use that trail. So that was another objective, to try and raise the trail up out of the floodplain and create more passable conditions all the year round. And these are just existing photos. Fine silt, you see the bed formations here. Fine silts coming from the upstream urban areas and the industrial areas. Pretty homogeneous channel, trapezoidal, fairly small trapezoidal channel. And here you can see some examples of how the locals used to use this stream. Pretty nasty. So the general design process that we followed was characterizing what you've got already, historic existing conditions, with some looking at the historic conditions, and then the site constraints, coming up with conceptual ideas before we get into detailed modelling and design. And then a very important part that Aberdeen City Council were very keen on was the consultation process with stakeholders and locals to try and get this sense of ownership involved. And then a selection of 2 final design options that would then go to modelling and ultimately a selection of a final design. I didn't mention actually at the beginning, I should mention the project partners here. Walking the Talk are a small firm based in Aberdeen, ecologists, and did a lot of the stakeholder outreach, and then of course our friends here today and ourselves. Salix did the implementation of the project, and a fantastic job, as you'll see. Hamish is going to present the slides in the second half. So existing conditions, this is LiDAR imagery, LiDAR topography, LiDAR developed topography, and you can see the existing alignment of the East Tullos Burn here, and the lower areas to the north, just to the north of East Tullos Burn, existing conditions that we wanted to try and utilise or combine with the project, those lower areas, so we didn't have to do a lot of earth moving. And there you see a topo map, one of the major constraints that isn't actually shown on this previous map, I don't think, was this UFP line, which is from a fish processing plant, which you can imagine the type of stuff that's going through that pipeline, straight out to North Sea, right? So we obviously couldn't encroach at all on that pipeline. So this was one of the conceptual designs for the scheme, re-meandering the channel, big focus upstream on water quality, trying to filter the water quality in this water quality basin, which evolved over the project design, and you'll see that as we get into that. So re-meandering with an inset floodplain terrace, trying to get that increased floodplain connectivity, enhancement of those wetlands, those existing wetlands. Hamish will show you a model of existing conditions where you can see those wetlands inundated, and then in the enhancement of those wetlands, those seasonal wetlands that we'll show with inclusion of the project. Varying levels of riparian planting densities were developed as part of the conceptual alternatives. And then this is where the design, one of the design options that evolved from this. So you see the re-meandered channel, upstream, almost a water quality basin it became, and then the seasonal wetlands that would have periodic connectivity to the main channel, and then wetland scrapes at intervals along the corridor. And then the riparian planting, various different densities of riparian planting, as we've mentioned. And then this cross-section line here will just show a cross-section here through the channel. So the dotted line is the existing topographic elevation, and then we show the inset floodplain terraces there in this riparian corridor buffer that would border the new channel alignment. So much better floodplain connectivity, and then these side wetland scrapes and the seasonal wetlands, very important elements of the whole project. Then I mentioned the consultation process, really important part of the process. Walking the Talk really did a fantastic job of leading this. They went to many different locations throughout the local vicinity, supermarkets, public meetings, all sorts of different centres. They had displays and really met the locals and talked to the locals. So it was a big, not just consultation, but a marketing process, really, explaining to the locals just the importance of what we were trying to do here, what Aberdeen City Council were trying to do. And got input from not just the local people, but also but also key stakeholders. And I think there's a list of key stakeholders. And there was online consultation opportunities as well through the internet. And I've mentioned the key stakeholders. Here's the key stakeholders. So you can see there was a lot of consultation with these agencies as well. Really led by the City Council and us, the consultant team. So really important consultation process. So that's the existing conditions taken looking east out into the sea, and you can see the existing alignment of the East Tullos Burn, and then the realigned our artist's impression of the realigned channel, and then adding in these options for wetlands, seasonal wetlands that would have connection during higher flow events, and then varying degrees of riparian vegetation. Actually, I was just out there last summer, and Hamish was just out there 2 weeks ago. The ultimate design was a lot lower riparian density, right?
Low density.
Pretty low density. So maybe just touch on why it was such a low density just before.
I think it's the right.
Yeah, exactly.
So as part of the design process, Chris mentioned, the next stage we went on to was modelling. So we've got the detailed topography, and from the detailed topography we construct a 2D model. We used SRH 2D. This is existing conditions. So you see under existing conditions there's generally very little connectivity. This is a sort of what should be a just out of bank flow. Very little connectivity generally, but you get these wet areas. So this area was quite often flooded, and importantly this area here, and what would pretty much always happen is that this path here would get inundated. So there was, this whole area here was out of bounds for any walkers or dog walkers, etc. during flooded periods. So we do have these areas here which are already low areas which are wet. So part of the design was to accentuate those areas. So as I said, we did this 2D hydrodynamic modelling, and then so this is the, as I said, the existing condition. This is the design option, the ultimate design option. So here we've connected this low area here and developed it to make this sort of treatment pond here to deal with the water quality issue. We have the more meandering channel corridor, so the darker blue line is a low flow channel, the lighter sort of thicker line is the inset corridor, and then we've got this connected series of wetland ponds and swales and some backwater habitat here. So in combination with the redesigned path network, we could actually have a causeway across the neck of that feature, so it was always passable under high flow conditions. So we went through this process, and this is an iterative process. We've identified the optimal design, and then we produced design drawings, detailed design drawings. This is the top part of the site. This is the treatment pond, and this is the bottom part of the site here. And then I think we can focus in. This is what the wetland feature looked like. So these series of ponds connected by these sort of higher elevation swales, and connected to these flow channels here to the main channel. So it's connected under moderately high flows and connected under lower flows than it was connected under existing conditions. So it would be a more active wetland feature. And we did some cross-sectional designs, and all these all these design drawings were taken to the construction phase, and Salix very accurately reproduced our designs, and we can. I'll show you some photographs later of the constructed design. So there's a planting scheme in relation to the wetlands, especially following these types of areas were planted and using specific appropriate native species. This is a plan of the planting scheme, the different types of species in relation to the different types of habitat. These are the types of species, native species that we had used. Again, this is a part of the project that Walking the Talk led. It's they identified the appropriate species for this type of environment, and in combination with Salix, we identified or sourced the plants to plant up. So now I'm going to go through a series of photographs of different parts of the site at various stages during the project. So you've seen this sort of photograph before, but this is the downstream parts, just looking out to sea. So here you see the pre-restored condition with the sort of straight channel, makes a pretty much right angled bend here. There's this occasionally wet, sort of soggy area, which, and occasionally, every time there's high flows, this section of the path was impassable. This is a strangely good weather day in Aberdeen, so it maybe sort of doesn't look as bad under these blue sky conditions as it could do. And then during construction, it's the wetlands being constructed here. Then this is one season after, this is the end of last year, so this is about 6 months after, it's already a lot of colonisation. And you see the path here, there's these culverts connecting the path. So the path remains dry under high flow, and this is high flow conditions here. So this is a fairly significant flood. And you can see the path is perfectly accessible under this flow. This was quite a significant flow event. And then this is just 2 weeks ago, so really nicely vegetated up. As I said, there's light planting, so there's not as much trees as we'd suggested in some of our options. This is another view, so this is looking down this direction into this area here. So this is under existing conditions, and you see this area with the path inundated with this, there's been a recent flood event. This is during construction. This is 6 months after construction, and then this is just a couple of weeks ago. So really nicely vegetating up, and you see the wetlands really developing nicely here. This is the wetland area. This is what it was like prior to construction. This pretty wet, soggy area that wasn't really usable by anybody. And this is the site now. So this is looking out towards the North Sea, and this one's looking back towards the site. So really nice, in a relatively short space of time, really nice development of these wetland ponds. The upper retention pond, this is what it looked like before. This is this area, this sort of triangular shaped area that used to be, again, inundated during high flows. The channel's in here, and there's a sort of embankment feature in here that holds that water in there for quite a long period of time. So we developed that. This is the beginning of the construction process here. This is after some of the wetland plants have been planted, and this is after it's just been finished. Some geotextiles being used for the exit flow channel here, and this is it just 2 weeks ago. So the wetland plants, the reeds have really nicely taken off here. So, and in terms of function, this is the entrance to the site here. So the burn comes out. This is the embankment to the railway here. The burn comes out by a culvert over here, flows along here, and deposits into here. And there's a surprising amount of fine sediment, as we discovered, being delivered by the river. And this is this retention area. So this is the retention pond doing its job. Already this is a very large amount of fine sediment that's collected over about 18 months, and various other bits of urban detritus. And you'll see the water quality here isn't great. And we don't have any specific water quality data yet from SEPA. SEPA have the data, but they haven't released it to us yet. But just from observation, you can see in this area the pond doing its job of the concentration of the visibly poor water quality here, whereas when you get to the downstream, the exit part of the retention pond, it's visibly much better quality. I mean, we still need to see what the water quality data show, but at the moment it looks promising that there's been a significant increase, and certainly the dropping out of this fine material is very important. There's a lot of nasty contaminants in this material here. So very quickly, to sum up the lessons learned, it was very important. The community outreach part was really important to get the buy-in of stakeholders. And it's one of the few projects, I think, that we've done where we have had letters from the public really enthusiastically praising the project. And it was really rewarding. We get paid for a project at the end of the day, but it's almost more rewarding to get somebody who's genuinely happy with the project. And just people saying that they never used to go near the park before, that it was always wet and boggy, and if it rained at all they couldn't get around the path network. So it was really encouraging to see that we did a good job. And just a general point that the treatment of water quality using a SUDS type of approach, and this isn't a typical SUDS type of approach. We're not really using the more typical engineered type of flood solution. We're trying to reinstate natural process, but this can be incorporated within, as Chris says, rehabilitation, or some people use the word restoration, whichever is your favourite term. But in terms of the restoration of water bodies, this sort of type of feature can be incorporated to produce these water quality benefits, and obviously associated ecological benefits. And sort of coming back to the same point is the importance of understanding natural physical process and how that relates to an ecological response is crucial. The philosophy behind any design we do, but this one in particular, is to try and reinstate natural process, understand how natural process does the job of treating water quality or providing habitat, and try and incorporate that into your designs. And that's a sort of central philosophy which we employ, and I think that is very important in restoration projects. And great team partners. Salix and Walking the Talk were really, I think we had a really good team for this. We all got on really well, and I think all components of the project worked really well. There was very few, I don't know, Pete might argue, I don't know, but there was very few major mishaps. That I think things went pretty well according to plan. And it was really good to work with Salix and Walking the Talk. And that's all we've got.